Hi, today we're going to be talking about how to make this foam board string art with pins, and you can make two different shapes. There's a doggy, which is a little more complicated, and there's a heart, which is a little bit easier. For younger kids, this would be a good idea to start with a heart instead. And for kids who can handle a little bit more, you can do the doggy, just because the angles are a little more difficult. Okay, so let me show you how to do that. Each student is going to receive a piece of foam board. It's got a white side and it's got a cork side. And they're also going to choose whether to do the heart or the doggy. And if you have young kids, just give them the heart. And if you can see on these hearts and dogs, you can see there's little tick marks. And that's actually going to be where you're going to place these pins that we're going to use to wind our yarn about. So I've placed the pins onto these foam board sections so that the kids don't have to reach into a container of pins and poke themselves. They're already here, so they can just grab the top and not poke themselves. So what you need to do is have the students take out their piece of corkboard. I'm going to be showing you an example with a heart. And they're going to place their heart or their doggy in the center as much as they can, about. Then they're going to use their little pins, which they can share with another student, and I have one right in front of them. They're going to pull out a couple pins, and actually one thing you should do is just go ahead and pin it to the board in a couple places just to keep it from moving. So there I've got 3 pins in there, and now my piece of paper won't move. So now I'll explain to them that you don't want to push the pins all the way in, because then they actually come out the other side a little bit and become a little bit scratchy, and it could scratch them. So they need to leave them sticking out a bit from the board. Another reason you need to have that little space is because that's where we're going to wind the yarn. Alright, so now they have it stuck onto their board, they're going to take pins and they're going to place them kind of near where the marks are. They're not exact. They're about every 1/4 inch. You're going to tell them to make sure they put the pins, oh, there we go, on the outside of the paper and not onto the paper, like pinning the paper down, because we're actually going to remove the pattern piece after, and then we're going to have our outline of pins. Okay, so I'm pinning right outside of the paper, and I'm pushing them in, but I'm not pushing it in all the way. Oops. One tip is occasionally there will be one that's a little bit harder to push in, and that's because there's glue holding the cork board onto the foam board the way it's made. And so tell them if they're encountering resistance, if it's too hard for their little fingers to push, that just call you over and you can help them push it in. Okay, so you see how I'm placing these in here? Actually, the most important places to have exact are the point at the bottom of the heart and at the top here. There should be 3 right here, because that's really important for making the shape and how it looks. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going around pinning, and I'm going to make sure that they're not too close together. For example, like the kids might do a bunch that are close like this. I would walk around and I would say, "Oops, it's time to fix that a little bit," and I would go over and I would pull out like every other one and just move it down and adjust. Luckily, these things you can just pull them out and put them back in elsewhere, and it all works out. And make sure they're not pushing them too far, that there's some good clearance here, because that's where we're putting the yarn. So I'm going to continue, and I'll see you back here when I've got this all pinned. these are getting too close together, so I'm going to move them. You don't actually have to follow the marks, they're just a suggestion. Try to make sure the students go pretty quickly through this pinning section, especially if they're doing the dogs, because they have to save time to do the actual yarn portion. Okay. So as the students are pinning, I would walk around and check that they're not pushing them down too far and they're not too close together. And I would help them to move them around a little bit to adjust them. So now what we do is we take out these pins that are holding the piece, the pattern. I'm going to put them back into my little corkboard holder. And we're going to pull out the paper. So it kind of can bend it. There we go. And you're gonna pull it out. And now we've got our heart or our doggy. And be careful when they're doing the doggy. They just need to, there's a lot more corners. So make sure they put tack on each of the sharp corners. The end of the tail, the stomach sections. Those are really important parts. All right, now that I got my heart, I'm going to grab my yarn. You can use variegated yarn or you can use solid color, obviously. And what they can do is do a solid color around a little bit and then tie it off and change colors and do that one on top, and they can kind of make a layered look. And if you want to simplify it more than that, just use some variegated yarn. So here's what we're going to do. So we're going to take the variegated yarn. I am going to tie just a little half a square knot. See that? And you can start anywhere you want. I'm going to take a pin and I'm going to put that little circle around it and I'm going to tighten until it's on there. And then I'm actually going to do a second knot. Make another loop and go through. I'm going to pull that one also. And now it's on. And I'm just going to cut off this tail. These scissors are not very good. Okay, cut off that tail and we're going to throw it into our yarn bowl. Now that we're attached, we can take this yarn, we're going to pull some out from the skein. They could actually just pull a length off beforehand if they wanted to share the colors. And we can go anywhere we want in the circle now that we're anchored. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to come around the pin. See that? And now I'm going to head in a different direction. I'm going to come over here. Go any direction you want. Don't pull too tight or the pin will come out or bend inwards. Just tell them just to, not too tight, but tight enough to straighten the yarn. Okay, and you can wrap around entirely if you want and then go another direction, or just wrap halfway. So I'm just going to keep going like this. This is the really fun part. I'm going to try to get every pin, so tell them it's a game to get every pin with some yarn on it. And tell them not to go over the top, kind of like this. That's going to ruin their heart shape. They do have to go around this section. One other tip I would say is go around the one at the very top and the one at the very bottom of the heart. That's an important place. Pull off some more yarn. Keep going. You can go over here. You can kind of watch for bald spots if you need to cover some ground. Watch for bald spots and fill those in. Like here's nothing over here. So I'll go that direction. Go back and forth. Sometimes if there's too many of the same color, I would make sure I come back over here. Like I need some blue over here. Maybe I'll come back when I get to the blue of the variegated yarn. Come back that direction. Here we go. Let's keep going. Don't pull too tight. Okay, so I'm back to the blues. I'm going to add some blues on this side. Some greens. Oops, that one already has one. And it gets a little more challenging to find a pin that does not have yarn on it, but that's kind of the fun part. I don't like that. I'm going to go over here. Do this one. Over here. And if it's sliding off, sometimes I'll go around that pin all the way in a circle, and then it'll really get stuck on there. And some pink over here. Some pink down here. I think I got a bald one here. I want to go, I don't like the way those are crossing too much, so I'm going to go over here. And then back. And then here. Here's a naked one. Here's one. That's too much crisscrossing of orange. This one. This one. And the students can really stop whenever they like the way it looks. I'm almost done. I feel like a couple more. Let's see if there are any pins that I haven't done yet. Over here. This one. Here's one. Oop, here's a couple. Almost done. Okay. They can do double on some if they want. So once the students have reached a point where they've gotten to most of the pins, or they feel like they like the look of it, I would suggest taking the yarn, wrapping it around a peg the whole way, and then outlining the heart or the doggy. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to go around, I'm going to anchor it onto the bottom point or any points that I have on the dog. Go around. Anchor it around this section until I get back to where I started. That just makes it look a little more polished and it helps it to pop a little more. And now I'm going to cut my yarn off of my skein. I'm going to leave about 5 or 6 inches. Just enough so that I have enough to play with to make my knot. Again, I'm going to make half a square knot. So just make a circle and then put the end through. You get this loop. I'm going to take that loop. It doesn't matter which pin you decide to put it on. Wherever is closest to, you can move the knot downwards. You just don't want slack. Alright, so I'm pulling on it so I don't have slack, and I have my half a knot. And now I'm going to actually just tie another one, put it on there. So I got a couple knots. And then you can just cut it off, or one thing I might do is take my pin and pin through the end a little bit and then stick it down. That might help stay there. I'm going to cut it off. Okay, hide the little end. And there you go. They've got their string art. It's really beautiful. Make sure they don't push through the other side so they don't hurt themselves.